I want you to picture a village in 1700s Britain, where time is real but is not in charge. The sun tells you when the day is usable. The weather tells you whether the day is kind. Most people work agriculture, planting, harvesting, animal care. Work expands in contracts with seasons, daylight, and rain. Productivity shows up as stuff that you can point at. Grain, animals, land maintained. You don't log hours, you finish things, you survive. Of course, landowners live in a different relationship to time, as they have always been. Their income comes through rents and surpluses. Time here matters for coordination and records, not because they have to show up at dawn to keep food on the table, but their schedule is flexible because wealth, it does not require presence. Artisans, on the other hand, shoemakers, weavers, blacksmiths, carpenters, whatever, they sit somewhere else again. Small workshops, tools, skill. They are paid by finished goods or contracts. Time matters when delivery approaches, but it isn't the unit of value itself. So there isn't one universal start time. And that's not in any way romantic nostalgia. It's historical wage and guild records that show huge variation in working days across regions and trades. The rhythm is very local. It's also very negotiated. It's uneven. Clocks did exist. Church bells did mark prayers. Town clocks did announce markets and curfews. These coordinated civic life, but they did not micromanage labor minute by minute. So you get this kind of balance where a clock can exist without turning into a supervisor. That balance holds because production scales slowly. Work stayed embedded in households and communities. The economy is close to consumption. Then machines arrived. Between roughly 1760 and 1830, Britain industrializes really fast. Textile production accelerates. Cotton imports surge. Demand grows faster than household production can meet. Production concentrates. Capital gathers inside mills instead of staying scattered across homes and small workshops. Water power, then steam, makes factories fixed places that want continuous operation. And since machines are very expensive, every idle hour becomes measurable loss. And once idle becomes measurable, it becomes also morally suspicious. A machine sitting still isn't neutral anymore. It's money evaporating. At this scale, labor can be whenever the task is done. It has to be predictable. In early factories, the pace no longer followed completion. The machine runs at constant speed, and humans adapt themselves to that rhythm. So synchronization became a condition of employment, because your body, your attention, your whole life, everything has to learn to fit into the machine's tempo. Urbanization started to lock in. Manchester is a great example here because across the first half of the 19th century, it explodes from a modest town into a crowded engine of production. Big cities create big labor pools. Big labor pools change bargaining dynamic. Workers became more interchangeable and absence becomes more visible. So employers gain leverage by standardizing schedules across many people. Political conditions reinforce this because early industrial Britain has limited regulation. Why? Long hour maximize machine use and capital return, so factory inspection records and parliamentary inquiries described working days stretching up from 12 to 16 hours, often including nights. Children, sometimes as young as 8, work under the same schedule. And as hours continued to lengthen, strain accumulated. Accidents, health deterioration, public concern, especially around child labor. In 1833, the Factory Act introduced limits on child labor, mandating schooling and establishing inspection. But the deeper significance here is not just the morality of it, it's also procedural in a way, because the law here defines work in hours, not tasks. So time is becoming a legal object. And from here, along with producing goods, factories started to produce schedules. Once time becomes the basis of coordination, it also becomes the basis of, negotiation as well. During the 19th century, industrial economies go through repeated cycles of unrest. Workers organize around hours because hours translate across trades. Outputs may differ from job to job, but hours are comparable. Time became a shared language as well, simple enough to unify people who do completely different work. In Britain, this fuels the 10 hours movement, culminating in the Factories Act of 1847. the 10 Hours Act, limiting women and young people in textile mills to roughly a 10-hour day. And well, yeah, it is not exactly 10 hours for everybody kind of victory people have imagined, but it's a key step. The clock is now a political battlefield. People are fighting for time. Long hours remained common. Injuries started to rise. Fatigue started to accumulate. Unions started to grow. By the 1880s, the 8-hour day becomes a central demand. It offers predictability. It draws a boundary people can defend together. Mass strikes in May 1886 pushed this demand into public view. Then employers began experimenting. For sure not because they were kind, but because instability is very fucking expensive. And then in 1814, Ford introduces a shortened workday and higher pay, and they called it the $5 day. It reduced turnover while stabilizing the output. And this is a recurring theme, by the way, because reforms often arrive wearing moral language, but they're also deeply logistic. People are not just asking for dignity here. Firms are also trying to make the system run without constantly interrupting the workflow. Management practices has evolved around regularity and measurement. And then when time became the standard input for evaluating labor efficiency, politics also consolidated this structure. In 1938, the US Fair Labor Standards Act formalized the 40 hours weekend and defined overtime pay for covered workers. This is how the workday stabilizes as a repeatable unit. Because once standardized, time enables comparison across workers, firms, and sectors. Productivity here becomes liable as output per hour. Oversight becomes metric friendly. A system has become measurable, then governable, then normal. That sequence is quietly fucking terrifying because it doesn't require anybody to be evil. It just requires everybody to agree that continuing is kinda objective. And then suddenly, your life became a set of fucking boxes. Here's a simple exercise. Think about the last week. Not what you did. I'm talking about the structure. How many hours were actually yours? Hours you could spend without justifying them. How many were preclaimed by work, commute, obligation, and the low-grade anxiety of being reachable? How many free hours were still shaped by the schedule because you were recovering, dreading, or preparing? Now imagine the old village clock. It exists, but it doesn't define who you are. It marks the market and prayer, not your worth. Then imagine the factory clock. It doesn't just tell you time, it tells value as well. It tells legitimacy. It tells what kind of person you're allowed to be at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday. The story of the 9 to 5 tells you also that time becomes a social object, a legal one, an economic one, an administrative one. And then it got installed into everyday life so deeply that it feels natural. And that's actually the darkest joke in the whole thing. We defend it like gravity, like it couldn't be otherwise. But it was built piece by piece, industrial concentration, urban labor pools, weak early regulation, and then reform acts measured in hours, then standardized weeks, then categories, then metrics, then gentle tyranny of availability. And if that sounds a little unsettling, it should, because you're already living inside of it.